Hi, everybody. Hello again to those of you I know, and nice to see and meet those of you that I don't know. So what Louisa and I are going to do is we're going to make this as informal as is possible, recognizing that it's difficult with so many people on at the same time. It might get a little sloppy. We're going to encourage you to use chat. When one of us is talking, the other will try have a crack at trying to just keep on top of things. We're going to be presenting you some information, looking at membership from a number of different perspectives. So we strongly encourage you to feel free to put something in chat, your comments, questions in chat. And really what we're wanting to do is to mostly start a conversation with you, encouraging you to look at yourselves, your clubs, your groups of clubs, whatever, in a bit of a different way. So what we want to do is get you to think a little bit about how you're engaging the people in your club, and to start thinking about strategies, new approaches that you can take for keeping them engaged on an ongoing basis. And as Louisa likes to talk about making the experience that people have as irresistible as is possible. So what you see here is, I want you to imagine at the beginning of a year, the decision was made to grow the district membership by 0.5%, which is going to be, 7 or 8 members. And you think to yourself, wow, that's a pretty easy goal to accomplish. Well, what you see here is what we're calling the success track, and it shows, in order for that increase to happen, what actually has to happen throughout the year with membership. It needs to grow, as you see, up to December, to take into account the fact that there's always a drop off at the end of December. And then it needs to grow even more to the end of June, because there's another big drop off at that period in time. This concept was put together by my fellow coordinator for Zone 32, Herb Klotz, who's an absolutely awesome guy. And so we have to take into account our planning and our thinking about growing Rotary, that money talks and people vote with their wallet. So if the experience is not what they want to achieve, they're going to leave, and they do. This is what has happened on average over the last 3 years in District 7820. You can see it's a similar shape as the other one, but look at the end result. There's a drop, and that has consistently happened year over year in this district and every other district in zones 32 and 28. And for those of you who don't know it, zone 28 is all the districts and clubs in Canada, except for Vancouver Island, plus Alaska, plus some clubs in Maine, New York State, Michigan, and Washington State. So that's what's been happening. And this one shows you what's happened to date this year. So you can see that probably impacted by COVID, but not necessarily impacted by COVID, that the district membership numbers are even weaker than before. And we can anticipate a significant impact at the end of June. And what we want to begin targeting from this point going forward, and really encouraging you as incoming leaders to be thinking about, don't think about the yellow line and in terms of your membership. Well, we added 1 new member last month. Think in terms of the green line. Think about where you need to be to recognize people's behavior and the changes that happen. The other thing that we want you to start thinking about is the words attrition and attraction instead of recruiting and retaining. Attrition is 100% minus retention. So if you keep 85%, that means your attrition rate is 15%. As you see on the slide, a membership organization can expect a 10 to 15% rate of attrition. Life happens. People get married, people have kids, people die, they move, they get new jobs, they switch careers, whatever. RI's average attrition is around 14% internationally. And you can see how zone 28 compares. So the point is, if we want to grow, we have to be attentive to attrition and why it's happening, but also to attraction. And the rate at which we attract people has to be greater than the rate at which we're losing people. And you can see in District 7820 and in the zone entirely, that's not happening. And so the decline is a function of that. I also want you to stop thinking about the saying that you hear, and I heard it again a month or so ago from senior Rotary leaders, that we don't have a problem attracting people, we have a problem keeping them. That's just not true. The data doesn't bear that out. And I'm in a position to be able to share that with you. What actually happens depends on the zone, and it depends on the individual clubs. Some clubs do a great job keeping people and a terrible job attracting them. So we don't want to be thinking about that. We want to think about attrition versus attraction. And finally, I wanted to show you this. This is actually a club in Michigan. And I have available for each one of you, for your club, all you need to do is ask me for it. I can give you the similar piece of information. I give you your membership numbers going back to 2016 up to the end of March, plus your individual club's attrition and attraction rate. And that will allow you to start a conversation. And I'll also provide you some tips specific to what is happening in your club that you can start a conversation with other club members, district leaders, or whoever about what is happening. So just send me an email or get in touch with me somehow. My email is dlogan@bell.net. Identify your club, and I will send you something like that. Louisa.
So, and I'm just going to comment on something in the chat. Someone asked if Rotaract numbers were included there, and no, they are not. The membership numbers have not yet been fully integrated. So those are strictly traditional Rotarian membership numbers. So this particular quote is one that I think is very important. And I took this photograph actually on one of my trips to Newfoundland, but I think it's a very significant and useful quote to think about, in that when we're talking about membership, it's very similar to this. You want to build a ship. We don't want to just get people to go get wood and give them orders and give them work to do. They have to yearn for the vast and endless sea. And in this case, with membership, we have to be thinking the same way. It's not just, oh, let's have a recruiting event. First of all, ban the word recruiting, because it's not about recruiting. It's, as Doug just said, about making sure you're attractive, that you're offering value, which we'll speak to in a little bit, and that you have this idea of how you're going to create an environment that people yearn to be part of. Next slide, Doug. How do we start that? We start by a major activity and conversation. And as Doug said, these data that we have available for you are intended to give you really the starting point for conversation as you look in the mirror to understand, where are you? What is your club doing? Is it irresistible? And some of you may have heard me talk about that before. And Doug and I have done sessions around the things that make a club irresistible. And we're going to address a few of those in a minute. But it's really important to have this honest look in the mirror. Sometimes you see an image I've used of a little kitty looking in the mirror and he's seeing a giant lion. That's not the kind of looking we need to do. But we do that a lot in Rotary. We think we're great because, well, we just inducted 3 people, so everything's great. Not necessarily. You heard from Alex earlier this afternoon about the idea that our incoming RI president has of each one bring one. Well, when you bring those ones, are they going to stay? Are they going to find an environment and a culture that's irresistible to them? Or do you need to do a little bit of work right now before you start each one bringing one and adding to that of people who are just going to go right back out the door?
So Louisa's going to keep an eye on chat, and what I'd like you to do is use chat and just plunk in a number on a scale of 1 to 10. I'll run through these one at a time. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 couldn't be worse, and 10 being couldn't possibly be better. Quickly evaluate your club's membership experience. Go ahead and put a number in chat. There's only 70 people for you to keep track of, Louisa, so that shouldn't be hard. What kind of numbers are we getting? Oh, I wonder if we've lost Louisa.
Sometimes the space bar doesn't work. Lots of 8s and 7s, some 5s. I see a 4. My quick math average is 7.
Okay. Okay, same thing for your service and socials. What is that experience like? Service and socials.
So more 9s, more 8s, some 6s, couple of 4s, 7, maybe even a 10, or somewhere between a 7 and a 10, and an 8. Yes, they are 2 different things. This is true. Somebody noted that they're 2 very different things, and yes, but we don't have time to do absolutely everything. So we're just going to take the best that we can to get a sense. Obviously, this is not scientific. And where I had told you the average before was 7, I'm going to go to 8 on this one, that we're slightly better in terms of the service and the socials that we're able to do in our clubs right now.
Okay, thank you. Now, same thing, your membership diversity.
And diversity, remember, has many lenses: age, environment, education, professions. Okay, definitely lower numbers here. I've got some 5s, some 4s, some 3s, a couple of 8s and 9s, but on average, I'd have to say maybe a 4.8 on that one to 5.
Okay, thank you. Your image in the community.
Pretty good. I've got some 5s. I think there was 1, 4, 6s, 7s, 9s, 8s. We're going to go with 7.5 there.
Okay, and last one, the way you run the club, your business and operations, how professionally run are you?
So I've got everything so far from 4 to 9. Oh, I got a 10, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to give that 9.5, Michael Farron, because you're making it hard for me. 5. Okay, we're going to go with 8.2 on that one. So pretty good in terms of how we operate, pretty good in terms of our service and socials. Member experience, and if we're bringing a lot of people in, that's a pretty important one, right? So that was a little lower. Diversity was the lowest of the bunch, and image in the community, not bad, but could be better. Those are all areas where if you've given yourself anything less than an 8, I think there should be some work done pretty darn quick before you start bringing in more people. And we'll talk about that a little more. So this is in fact where we're going to talk about this. So one of the exercises that I've been through with a number of clubs, and Doug and I have had the privilege of working with clubs across North America in person and virtually through various conferences and events, but also individual club work, is to talk about all aspects of a club. And in fact, some of you may be familiar from a business environment of the phrase moments of truth. And what are your moments of truth? And that phrase came from the head of Scandinavian Airlines many, many years ago when he said, we're going to turn this airline around. And to do so, we're going to look at the thousands of moments of truth that relate to everything from a person finding our number to getting a reservation, to getting on the airplane, to getting off and getting their baggage and everything in between. And we're going to make every one of them excellent. That needs to happen with your clubs. As leaders, this is probably the most important thing you can be doing right now, is the planning and the investigation and the surveying and the interviewing of your current club members, and even more importantly, your past members, if you can reach people who came and went, the revolving door, and finding out what are the moments of truth related to all of those things on the left-hand side. Your projects, your format, the fun you have. Somebody mentioned in the chat, need to have more socials. What kinds of things do you do to engage people? How much does it cost? Are there ways you can make it less of a barrier for people? What are your fundraisers? Are some of them tired? Been there, done that so long that they're no longer giving you the return, but people just still love them? It's a hard thing to get rid of them. I know my own club has done that over the years, and it's a grieving process to move on. Your member orientation. Do people know what to expect when they come to your club? Do you give them the truth about what it's going to cost and what you expect them to do? Some tough ones to address, and I've seen this in a number of clubs, some that I've worked with in the last couple of months, that have issues with language humor, but also, and Doug will bring this up later, they're misogynistic. There's no way around it. People have come and gone because of the way they were treated. Is that happening in your club? And be honest about it. Public image efforts. What are you doing in all of those areas, and inclusivity? They're all critical as you think about how you're going to become irresistible and get rid of the idea of let's have a recruiting event and bring a bunch of people in. Not going to help you. We can look at the data in clubs in this district who have done that and increased their membership significantly. And guess what? Either the next year or the year after that, they're all gone. And those people are now saying, yeah, it wasn't what I really thought. I didn't really like it. Move on. So there are all kinds of tools available for you. Rotary has tools around a health check. We've given people tools in the past, and we have more if people are interested. I just saw a note that Michael's trying to redeem himself with me now by telling me that he's doing a strategic plan, which is awesome. Great to see that in Middleton. And there are tools to help you with that, to do the planning process. And there are people within the district who are available to help you with a planning process and to use the tools that are there, which are really to start that conversation again. We know these data, and somebody commented that the data are available in my Rotary that Doug spoke to. We know they're available to you, but we want to make it as easy as possible so we don't have anybody say, I don't know where to find that, although I'm sure that Holly showed you. We want to make it easy for you to have the data you need and to find these tools on the membership section of Rotary.org to have conversations to understand why are people staying that stay, why are people leaving that are not sticking around more than that magic 2-year number, and what are the issues around the value proposition that you have.
So to Luis's point, what do people want? People want value, and the value, their perception of value is shaped by the extent to which we give them an opportunity to provide service in the local community, friendship, fellowship, and professional development opportunities, all of which are even more, they've been important to us all along, but they're even more important to younger professionals. And let me just give you a specific example. In an earlier slide, the club that I showed you, the membership numbers from the club in Michigan, that club went through a process of transforming what they do and how they do it. And one major change that they made was a monthly service project in the community. And I don't know if you caught the fact that they added a chunk of members so far already in this Rotary year. So they're providing value. And as somebody else described them, they're going gangbusters. So those things they happen all over the place. They just don't happen often enough. Rotary also does a lot of work on understanding where people are at and what their interests are, why they stay, why they go, all the things that Louisa was talking about. And Rotary reports these are the major reasons. Cost or time, the environment in the club, just as Louisa was talking about, and I'm going to talk about in a minute, and unmet expectations. All of the things that Louisa say are reinforced by Rotary's data. But there's another point in there that I think Louisa and I would agree on. People, especially in Atlantic Canada, will tell you they don't have time, when that's their polite way of saying, I don't really like what's going on here. As people tend not to be honest about what really is happening. And we have enough examples of people just not speaking when something difficult has happened within the environment. So it's cost and time, but it's also the environment and the expectations. And the point is, if it's important to them and if they see value in it, people are going to make time.
Somebody had commented that there's a lot of work to do. And yeah, now is the time for people that are coming into leadership next year to really be the busiest. I generally say to people, if you're coming in as a president, club leader, club board member, right now, April, May, June, this is when you really should be the busiest in getting things figured out. And then it should be just implementing that. And we've worked with a number of clubs lately where they're really challenged with finding those leaders and with making sure they've got it all in place. Be prepared to try some different things. You can have co-chairs, you can have co-leads on things, you can have teams that take on tasks that might have traditionally been all the president. It's really important to make sure that you're not burning your presidents out, because we see it across North America that it is not unusual that after someone serves as a president, they may take a leave because it has been overwhelming and they may be subject to criticism for what they're doing. They're not doing enough, they're not doing it the right way. You've got to have the courage at this point to get past that and to recognize that there are different ways and different models for things to happen and different language to use. Some of you will know that I tried some of those things last year with different language and different ways of organizing things to say it doesn't have to just be the same way as it always was. It has to be what works for you now. And this particular diagram, which comes from Deloitte, is one that I really like to help us think about there are new ways of doing things. How things were, very much a hierarchy. That's been our history. How things have moved, a little bit more networking, but how things work best, as we know from the research on many, many organizations, is to have little clusters and to have people who are able to work together to get things done. And you'll see there the things that are so critical for people within a Rotary Club or a small or large business, that they have shared values and culture, that they know what the expectations are, that there's good information flow, and that people are rewarded and given positive feedback for what they do. Those are critical. The next one goes a little bit farther, and I love this particular slide. Doug, the next one, which says what we know that makes an organization really irresistible. And Deloitte, I think they didn't take it from me, but they've used irresistible too, and that's okay. I'm happy that we've both chosen to use that word. But they say that in order for their work environment to be irresistible, these are the things that it has to have. And I challenge you to ask yourself and to have conversations within your board and your leadership team about these, because these are the most important questions that you can be asking that relate to your membership. So when we talk about membership with a twist, we're not going to talk to you about host an event to get new members. We're going to talk to you about these aspects of your club. Is what you're doing meaningful and having impact? Right? Alex spoke about that earlier. How do you have more impact? Are the leaders supportive, or are they critical? Or are they saying to new people, oh, you just sit and watch and we'll show you how it's done. That's not the way we've done it. Is it an environment that they would describe as fantastic? I love that Deloitte chose that word, not just a good environment, but a fantastic one. Doug talked about the things that keep people in clubs, growth opportunities, and do they have trust, and do they feel that people are really doing their best?
So this is information that comes from 3 separate studies that were done on membership, encompassing roughly 1,600 clubs in total. It's clear that change in Rotary is not random. If you're a growing club, almost certainly you're going to continue to grow. If you're declining, almost certainly you're going to continue to decline. If you're fragile and on the edge, you could go either way. And here's the key and the most important thing for all of you people. That is unless something changes, and almost always that something is leadership. And we have seen over and over and over examples of clubs that have turned around positively and negatively based on the leadership being provided in the club. And the second piece of that is it has to be leadership of a group of people. You can have a really powerful, strong person come in, but if he or she is not followed and there's not a solid succession plan, then things run the risk of really beginning to fall apart. So membership grows if a club has a membership plan with clear goals, if they're active in their public image, if they're hosting events and including mixtures and they have a culture of growth they focus on. It means having a membership chair. It means thinking about growing at all times. Looking at alternative models, whether it's meeting times, types, whether it's creating a satellite club, helping to start a new club, or, and more importantly, probably of all of these, increasing flexibility, whether it's in the kind of members you have, whether it's in the dues, the way you pay your dues, how the dues are charged, attendance, meeting requirements, and so on. And then the last one, again, the word value. They are providing consistent long-term value. They have a vision and purpose aligned with their goals. They're adaptable and accountable. That leadership that I talked about, people are united. They come together to grow Rotary, to create a dynamic and awesome experience, and they're engaging and inspiring.
So it comes down to, as leaders, being open-minded and not falling into the trap, as is often the case within Rotary, of that's not the way we do it. That's not the way we've always done it. That's not what Rotary is all about. And we see it sometimes on Facebook with inappropriate comments that people make and with things that say, look, they're not open-minded. They're not prepared to try new things. Well, if we keep doing things the same way we've done them in the past, the line for membership has been declining for several decades. And we've been doing things pretty much the same every year of all of that time period. If we aren't prepared, as Doug said, for something to change, then you can expect the exact same results. We hear that definition all the time of insanity, right? Expecting different results. So as incoming leaders, your role right now is to collaborate with the succession team that you have within your club, and hopefully you have somebody identified that's going to follow you, or you have a plan to do shared leadership, or you have plans to have teams that are going to take on certain leadership for a quarter or even a month, whatever it is that's going to work for the makeup of your club, to say, what can we shake up to really make some change here? What partnerships can we have? Alex talked earlier about the need to develop more partnerships in your community. Maybe that's where you need to be focused right now, is a fairly streamlined plan. You've probably got all kinds of projects. Most of our clubs do so many things, and that is awesome. But maybe you might be better served to streamline a little bit and look at partnerships. We're doing one right now at the district level with the United Way and with the community foundations in Nova Scotia and with Dalhousie University on a training program around resilience. There are 25% of the people in that program who are not Rotarians. That was part of the point, to build some networking, to build some opportunities. So the courage to not be fully affected by that, that's not what happened in the last few years. That's okay. It's probably a good thing if you're able to do some things differently. So be open-minded to that.
So I really don't know who this is. It's a free image I got off the internet, and we use it to invite you to think seriously about how we treat each other. There are too many examples of Rotarians, usually, not always, usually men, behaving like this. And I have to tell you, I've written an article for the Next Zone newsletter about this issue because I'm so offended by it. In the last 6 weeks, and as recently as last Thursday, I've heard of 3 separate examples of different areas in our zone where senior Rotary leaders who are women have been viciously verbally attacked by men in the most offensive way. Guys, that's not on. We have to stop thinking it's okay for us to treat women in that fashion. I know it's not true for most people. Most Rotary men would not do this, but here's the thing which happened in each of those three examples. The people watching didn't step in. So we have to look at how we're treating each other. And we have to, as part of what Louisa was talking about, reflecting and looking in the mirror, we have to wonder what it is others who are new to us are seeing and thinking when they see these kinds of things happening. There's a whole new generation of people that would be appalled and offended and leave faster than they possibly could if they saw or experienced things like that.
And it's easy to say, oh, it doesn't happen here. It does. It does happen here. And we have dealt with it at the very highest level of Rotary leadership within the zone and higher within the last little while. And so it's shocking and it's unacceptable. And you need to be looking in that mirror and standing up and saying, that's not okay. And it's not just a treatment of women. We've seen it in other areas of diversity as well. And as I said earlier, there's many lenses of diversity and all of them need to be examined.
And here's the truth that goes along with this. I fully acknowledge that these are very, very difficult things. It is very difficult to confront this kind of behavior. It does take courage. It does take a certain set of skills. It does take a certain kind of personality. But the blunt reality is it's the cutting edge of the knife that has to withstand the greatest pressure. And guess what? If you're not creating change, you're not going to get any resistance. And for us to be the truly diverse organization we have the potential to be, we have to be the agents of change. And we have to be able and have the courage to look at who we are, what we're doing, and how we treat each other. Are you doing this one, Louisa, or am I?
Yeah. You.
Me. Okay. So I can't remember who said this, but I think it is absolutely true. Another thing that we need to be thinking about is part of the reason for the question earlier on about how well run your club is because we're volunteers doesn't mean that we're amateurs. And the point here is the best example of the professionalism of Rotary is the astonishing success that the organization has had in driving forward the eradication of polio. Can you imagine that the Gates Foundation or any of those key partnerships would have taken place if Rotary was seen as anything other than an upstanding organization? We're just volunteers doesn't cut it. Being a volunteer doesn't mean that you have to work as if you're working for money, but it does mean behaving in a professional manner. And it does mean being responsible and being accountable. And by doing those things, we help grow Rotary and we attract people to us.
So we've come down pretty hard on a few things, and we've found over the last couple of years that that's something we now need to do. We didn't used to do that, but we are now, because pretty well every one of the events that Doug and I have participated in over the last couple of years, we've had these situations come to us, and we felt that we needed to do that. But at the same time, we also want to recognize that one of the most important things about Rotary is the nurturing possibility that we have within Rotary to help people develop skills and to do things in ways that will grow individuals. We know in our vision statement, it's around the world, in our communities and in ourselves, that we need to be looking at how we do service, and Rotary offers us that. It's really a unique opportunity to give people ways to grow, and you have resources available to you. Within this district, someone mentioned in the chat about there's a lot to do and it's hard to take all of this back to your clubs. Absolutely, we recognize that, which is why we are able to provide people to help you. There are people within the district who are willing to volunteer and are willing to support the work that you do. Somebody also commented about how it can be intimidating to think about leadership and some of the language that we use. Change it. right? One of the things that my own club did many years ago when we went through a significant strategic process was to eliminate the term sergeant at arms. We had people who had left the club when we did the looking in the mirror and the interviewing of people who'd left who said, yeah, we didn't know Rotary had this military connection. They had misinterpreted that, but it was a word that they found challenging. And we thought, well, it doesn't really reflect what we do now. So let's stop using that. Same thing last year. I found the term governor unacceptable to me. And so I chose to be a chair. If you think something is a hurdle or some kind of barrier to you being able to achieve the goals that you have and to have the impact in your community, change it. Even if you say, let's just try this for 6 months, let's try it for a year, let's see what happens. We can always go back, but let's try and find ways to nurture the potential that you have within Rotary in a way that's going to work in your environment.
So the last bit, food for thought, and then we'll stop sharing and give you an opportunity to ask questions in chat and have a bit of a conversation for the rest of our time. We have a powerful tool available to us. We just have to choose to use it. The four-way test really is an outstanding way for us to evaluate ourselves and our relationship with our fellow Rotarians, with our family, with our friends, with our communities. It's not always easy to answer the questions, but the process of trying to answer them can actually be very rewarding and very enriching. It's also a wonderful way of dealing with some of the difficult questions that arise. For example, what I'm often hearing people say when it's something difficult around race or sex or any of those issues comes up, people say, why are you bringing politics into Rotary? It isn't politics. It's about the four-way test. And so that's our response is to challenge people based on this set of values. The four-way test provides us a tool through which we can help move forward. Louisa, did you want to add? I'm going to stop sharing now.
Yeah, no, I will just to finish that one out, that in all of the cases that we have dealt with lately related to inappropriate language, inappropriate communication that has happened between senior leaders and others locally and afar, the four-way test was definitely not considered. It was definitely not something that people thought about when they determined, is this okay to say to somebody? Is this okay to post on Facebook? We see a lot of it on Facebook right now and have over the last number of months, south of the border more so, where the four-way test was definitely not part of what people were doing. And if we did, we have this amazing tool that would allow us to be a much more diverse and welcoming and inclusive and impactful organization. So do keep that in mind. And I think we have a bit of time, Alana, for some questions. So we open it up to you.
Yes, we do. So questions, folks. Brandon has a question in the chat. Is there a presentation that can be given to clubs on the four-way test?
There are actually, if you Google four-way test, there's people all over the place have written all kinds of articles, and I'm almost certain that you'd be able to find something that you could use.
There are even little workshops and training things that clubs have created to work with children, to work with schools. So in some parts of the world, there's an early act, which comes before Interact even, where clubs have gone into elementary schools and done whole programs around the contents of the four-way test.
Fabulous. Any other questions, folks? Comments?
We scared them off.
We have that effect on people.
Just wanted to say that that is a great presentation, folks. It was really, it's good stuff.
I second that.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Maria. And
Yeah.
we're happy to speak to clubs and to, as Doug volunteered, to pull that data if you need help with that from My Rotary.
So it's our job to help you with that stuff. So as I said, I'm more than happy to put together your own individual numbers, have a conversation with you and or your club leaders or your whole club. I'll talk to the whole club if you want to arrange a meeting just to look at what's going on and what you might be able to do about it.
we're very fortunate in this district to have a significant number of people who are involved in zone leadership and in having the opportunity to learn from people across the continent and beyond. So Doug and I are both on the zone leadership team. I'm also an incoming innovative club advocate, and Doug will be the overall coordinator for our zone next year. We also have Stella with the polio team, and of course Christina and several people in this club who are part of the zone public image, and Lorianne Jones, who's going to be chairing a zone focus on inclusivity. So we have a lot of people who have access to other people, so don't hesitate to ask us.
So we have a question here in chat. Do we have some sort of KPI or measurements to see if all clubs are moving in the new way of attracting and keeping men? That is a piece of what I showed you earlier on, the success track. If you saw that chart, we're tracking that, which is a way of us being on top of how we're doing within each district and across the zone. But we also have that the memberships line that I showed you an example of for your club. I have that for every club in every district in this zone and in zone 32. So we're able to see how you're doing as a club. And if you really wanted to know the scary or good news about how you're doing in relation to other clubs as well.
So 2 questions I'll take from the chat. Somebody just asked if we had good demographic information about age, for example, within our district. And Holly, I'm sure, would back me up when I say it's as good as what you give us. So for a significant number of clubs, the data that have been entered about your club members and birth dates is not there. So the reality is, no, we don't have good data. Now, as incoming leaders, you can address that. You can go into your membership list, and if people don't want to put their birthday, you don't have to put, January 12th. You could put January 20th or something. If you think there's a security issue, put February 20th. Who cares? It's the year that's most important. And if people don't want to enter it for your club, guess on a year. Put January 1st and guess on the year, because you can probably be within 5 or 10 years. Except for me, because you'd be wrong. But if you get close, you've got at least some demographic data that might be useful for you. But no, we don't have good data. And now I did that so long, I forget what the other question is. So I got to go back and look. There was another one. Toastmasters, right? That was the other one. So Toastmasters, that is, we don't have good data around that either, because it's been very much at the club level of whether or not clubs have taken advantage of the opportunity in their own area to have somebody from Toastmasters participate. It's really a local thing. I don't know of examples where there's been some really, sort of action and impact necessarily. Some of you may know of that, but I would suggest it's a local thing that clubs can pick up on. And as we're doing right now, to look at other groups in your area, whether it's the chamber or any other service group that you can partner with.
So I had another request. My contact is dlogan@bell.net. Send it to me. I won't do anything over the weekend because I turn the computer off on Saturday, but I can get to it next week, and I can give you your club's information.
So somebody commented that Toastmasters is in some places not meeting because of COVID. That's true, but I know in my club, we had somebody speak to us who might've been in New Brunswick, if I remember correctly. So they're doing some things online as well. And so there may be people who are available to just do a program for your club around what Toastmasters is all about. So you start the conversation. Even during COVID, we can be doing that. I miss anything, Alana? I think you're kind of keeping track.
I'm keeping an eye on it too. Stella had a question, but I'm not exactly sure what she means by it. So Stella, do you want to ask?
I was just going to say, if we had time, if you had any examples of some of the things that have gone wrong, not pointing to any people in specific, but can you give an example of how people have, so a concrete example of how someone sort of behaved badly or spoken wrongly, or without, I don't want to incriminate anything or.
No, well, we've seen it all over North America, and some of them have been similar. So in some cases, it's sort of pervasively inappropriate language and humor, right? So humor that's offensive to people that after a while you stop saying, oh, well, that's just so-and-so. He's like that. He sits in the back and he does that. Not good enough. Oh, but he's a really good donor to the foundation. We can't say anything to him. Not good enough. We've got to deal with those things and have the courage to address them. So sometimes it's that kind of situation. Sometimes it's a more insidious, almost hidden situation. I've worked with a number of clubs where they've said, yeah, we used to have more women. I don't know what's happened. Like 5 years ago or 8 years, we had more. And now all of a sudden we don't. And I don't know why they all left, but yeah, they're gone. And when you start to drill down, you find out that, some of them came in with lots of energy and enthusiasm. And I'll say it's not just women. It could be people who are younger. I've had this situation who came in with new ways of doing things. And somebody spoke to them just so rudely and said, how could you think that that was okay? And just terrible ways of responding to people that they just don't show up anymore. They're just gone. Nobody knows why. And they're probably going to say, yeah, I don't have time. But they're gone because they were shut down. Their ideas were not just ignored, but dismissed and rudely spoken about. I have colleagues who were part of the district governor team last year that I was colleagues with, who had previous past district governors tell them, you're not qualified for this job. I don't know why you think you can do this, but you certainly don't have the skills and experience for this. We've had that happen within this district, that younger women have been told, you're not ready to take on these roles yet. Would never be said to a younger man.
So here's another example, which is a little bit more subtle. Louisa and I did a session, I think it's probably almost 2 years ago now, in Indiana, and with clubs in the district there. And we ended up in a conversation with everybody about diversity. And what was quite fascinating was that as a room, as a group of people, all those clubs, their attitude towards diversity was, we welcome you in, just do what we do. So you have to just get used to, this is our way of doing things. And it's like, why do people keep complaining? We welcomed you in, so what more do we need to do? So it's a much more subtle thing, and but it's equally prevalent, I would say, that the attitude to newcomers and so on is buy what we're selling, not deliver what people want to buy.
We also had a young woman president, not in this district, but in this country, who was told by a past Rotary International president, RIP, president, from within North America, who said, if we'd known you weren't a Christian, you never would have been a president. Now, can you imagine saying that to a young woman? It happened. Guess what? She's not a Rotarian anymore. Like, where's the four-way test in all of those things? Not there. But people think it's okay, and it's not okay.
So we don't want you to leave here with the impression that this is, that it's all doom and gloom. Our point is that while it doesn't happen 80% of the time, it happens too often. And what it's really about, we've given you extreme examples, it's really about the more subtle things and the more subtle ways in which we don't speak up when we should, and we're engaging in practices that turn people off and want people to leave. Almost all Rotarians are awesome people. What I always say is the proportion of really cool people to otherwise is far more positive in Rotary than it is elsewhere. So it's just a wonderful group of people, but let's just up our game a little bit.
Yeah, nice.
Can I ask a question or kind of make a comment?
Sure.
So we have in our club, they're all really wonderful, and I've actually never seen anything like that. But what we do have, which makes it really difficult at times, is in a really polite way, board members might say, oh, we don't do that. We don't do it that way ever. And we've never done it that way. And so we're not going to do it that way. And they're really sweet and polite about it, but like, this is the rule. And it's very hard to know how to approach that.
You want to take that one, Doug, or do you want me to tackle that one?
No, well, I will start by saying it's an easier question to answer when we know more about the club and what is going on. It's those kinds of things are very difficult to give general answers because it really does depend on personalities. For example, it could be somebody who just it never crossed their mind that it might be a good idea to do it differently. It could equally be somebody who's absolutely adamant that nothing will ever change. Right? So it's hard. You go ahead, Louisa. I'm reluctant.
Well, I think, you know, we've heard that a lot, and across North America, you're not alone with that. And in many cases, people think it really is a rule. It really is written somewhere that this is how you do it. And the reality is 99.9% of the time, it isn't. It's just habit. It's a tradition that has happened. And we've seen it in many clubs where, whether it's something like the president chairs every meeting. I'll use that as something we heard in one club at one time. Well, that's what the president does. They chair every meeting. They have to. You have to do that if you're the president. No, you don't. There's nothing anywhere that says that that's a rule. Show me where it says that. And what if we just tried for the next month something different? What if we shared it? Or, you know, this is the way that we organize an event, and this is how you have to do it this way. There's lots of ways to come at things, but it does get very ingrained, and we can certainly talk to you specifically about your context. But my experience has been that it can help to say, well, let's just humor me here, and let's just try it once and see what happens. And the sky will probably not fall.
Another a really important point is don't try to change it alone. Have allies. Even if you get two or three other people that are on board before you try to take it on, you just run the risk of burning yourself out. And plus, you know, 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 2.
It is hard for some people to accept change. It's sort of like there's always those people who have doubts about what they're going to do. It's just like the guy standing at the end of the runway and Kitty Hawk yelling, "It'll never fly, Orville," that kind of thing. But you have to persevere, I think, on most of these things. And I always found one of the ways to do that is one of my person that advised me one time said, the way to change is gentle persuasion, relentlessly applied.
That's great, Dan. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And for Margaret, I think Doug's comment that it's good to have somebody on site. If you can find one of those people that's had a lot of tradition, been around a long time, who, if you had a one-to-one conversation and said, look, I really want to try this, but I know I need some help. Can you maybe give me some suggestions, or what would you advise I do to help people see that this might be worth trying? If you can get 1 or 2 of those people on your side, it'll be a whole lot easier. I did that last year when I was starting to do some things differently.
Another thing to keep in mind is every single person participating in this conversation has a problem with change. It's not a question of whether you have that problem. It's just a question of what change it is you have a problem with. And you mean the people that tell me when I'm talking about changes, I love change. My response to that is, yeah, well, give me a minute and I'll find some change you don't like. So we can have a little bit of sympathy for where somebody's coming from, because it's a normal part of us being human beings.
Can I just give a really quick example of that? Our club used to be smoking was allowed, like this is before the hotels disallowed it, and just before. And I remember the DG's wife came in and she couldn't believe that, you know, we were still smoking in the club. And I brought it up the next directors meeting and just said, like, you know, why? And it shouldn't be. And it kind of came to the club as a vote kind of thing, and people weren't for it, and just, you know, it was change, and there were still smokers in the room. And a smoking, like one of our oldest members, who is a lawyer, stood up and said, it's time we changed. And it became a non-smoking club.
All right.
So
cool.
Wonderful. All right. Well, that was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, Doug and Louisa, for leading that with us. And thank you everyone for engaging and not being afraid to have this conversation. And it will take all of us going back to our individual clubs and having these conversations and challenging the norms, the negative norms that exist in order for change to happen. So I hope that this has got you all thinking. And again, the offer was made, reach out if you'd like Doug and Louisa or another team member to come in and have this conversation with your club members as well. That's what the district is here for. We are here to help your club thrive in all forms.